Welcome to lesson 7 of the full course How to Win Architecture Competitions. In this final lesson, we're going to focus on how to present your drawings on competition boards. I'll walk you through the process of using both model and paper canvases and talk you through the process of setting up a clear, concise and coherent visual presentation. We'll look at layout, hierarchy and composition and how to arrange your drawings on presentation boards that is clear, concise and professional, ready for your competition submission. You're welcome to follow along with the class by creating a free Rayon account using the link below or jumping into the template from the description. So let's dive into it. Now that we've reached the final lesson, we can see the entire competition workflow can be handled seamlessly in one place, all within Rayon. From importing the sitemap all the way through to assembling the final competition boards, which we're going to talk about today in this lesson. So the way that Rayon works is with canvases and views, as I've briefly touched upon before. And this is really helpful in keeping all the drawing styles and updates fully synchronized, so all in one place. This becomes especially powerful when working as a team, as everyone can remain aligned in real time and all within sync. Up to this point, we've been working within the same model workspace for the floor plans, sections and elevations, but across different model canvases. So you've noticed that I've got floor plan, I've got the sections, and then I've got the paper canvases all in the same space. This setup becomes particularly useful now when we're starting to pull together competition boards, whether it's a single board or whether it's multiple boards, because we then have all of our model canvases available for us to create viewports into within our paper canvas. So the way that canvases work is that you have two options, the model canvas, the paper canvas. I'm going to very quickly summarize it once again. Model canvases is where you produce the drawings. It's where you're creating your drawings. It's where you have all of your line weights, where you have all of your walls, your hatches, your textures, everything, all your blocks, etc., all in your model canvas. Now, a paper canvas is purely to locate your paper and your views into those model canvases. To show you how to create a new paper canvas, head to the plus button, go to paper canvas, and we're going to call it competition board. Now you can see here that it doesn't contain any pages, and I'm just going to close that for the time being, so it's a completely empty space. And then on the left hand side here where you've got layers, you can of course create a new layer. We're just going to call that view for the time being, because we're going to build a couple layers of views and pages. And then you can create a new page, which we'll see will drop in here automatically. And we can call that maybe slide 1. If you had a presentation type board, you can then put together different slides for your presentation. So this is imported this page here now, which you can then select and you can scale up and down. But the thing that I would recommend you do is go over to the right hand side here. You can change to portrait, landscape, and then you have all the various formats available to you. So you've got A4, you've got A1, A0, etc. Now what I'm going to do for this particular competition board is I'm going to rotate it portrait, and I'm going to do roughly about an A1 size. I might customize it slightly to make it slightly longer and narrower, but you can do that by dragging, push and pulling it here, or changing the size and width on this right hand side. Now, so that is how you can create a page, and you can create multiple pages. So for example, we could then do a second page, which we can then also make A1 portrait. And for as many slides as you have, you can create paper canvases. And when you come to export, I'll show you further down the line in this lesson that it's really straightforward to then export those pages individually or as a collective to build a presentation. So to talk through some kind of strategies and tactics that I think are really important when building your competition boards, I've picked out 3 examples here, which I think some of them work really well in one way and some work really well in another way. And so these are 3 examples of different approaches and strategies you can adopt as part of building your competition boards. And so I'm going to do a bit of an analysis here and talk through what I think is successful and unsuccessful with these presentations, and how we can then start pulling some of those strategies out and using them for our competition boards, which I'll talk through in a moment. So this first image here I think is really powerful in the way that first it has a strong hero image at the top of the page, which is obviously a rendered image. Everything else is quite kind of subtle and soft with its orthographic drawing. You've obviously got 2 rendered images down here on this right hand side, but this main image kind of steals the show. It's your hero image for the presentation, and it's aimed to capture your attention. Now, the only reason why it captures your attention is not only because it's kind of in contrast to the drawings below, and it pops with its color and with its shadow and with its depth to the image, but also because of the grid structure. And I think grids and composition is really critical for competition boards. I think often if you see a competition board that is quite crammed, or there's quite a lot of drawings in there that don't necessarily follow a structure or grid or composition, it can feel quite messy and unprofessional. And so just building a simple grid that your images and your text and diagrams can almost fall into place, I think is really successful. So I'm just going to almost just pull out here the grid that this person is using. And so you can see that there is a pretty logical grid and organization here. You've got your main hero image at the top, which acts as your kind of focal point, your main interest to the presentation. You've then got your orthographic drawing at the bottom, which is kind of given equal weight in terms of the grid, in terms of the size and composition. But obviously, because it's much softer, it's got a white background, it's a lot more kind of detailed in its architectural quality. It's a slightly different type of image. And then in the middle here, you've got your kind of body of text, which I think is a good balance of text. Sometimes you can overdo it with too much text. And then you've got your kind of concept diagrams running along the middle here, which I think work really well to kind of provide that break between this upper image and this text zone with this lower orthographic image. Now, what also works really well with this particular board is the image variation and drawing variation. So they have a few different types of drawings here. They've got a render, which is obviously in this kind of pastel-y tone, which I think works really well, and it's quite soft and artistic and delicate. You've then got your orthographic drawings at the bottom here. So you've got floor plan and section. And I think this works really well, how this is almost associated with one another when you're reading this floor plan, because this section lines up with the floor plan. It's quite easy to read between the two. And then they've got some concept diagrams running through the middle here, which is showing the kind of process of them building the building form and coming to the geometry that they've come to. And so I think as an ordered presentation, as I've mentioned, it works really well in that it's giving the drawings breathing space. It has a clear and consistent grid structure. And there's also image variety with a similar tone of architectural communication. The graphic communication is a similar tone throughout the presentation. Now, example 2, in my opinion, is potentially even more kind of captivating, purely because the whole presentation is fully black and white. And I think there's a clear graphic style and communication here, which you can read very clearly. It's quite interesting how they have the kind of orthographic drawings central to the image. So the page, so that now becomes your main focus, now that it takes quite a significant area of that presentation up. And then obviously you've got your renders at the bottom and top with a site plan at the top left here. And so this floor plan and diagrams are kind of, looks like an exploded axonometric to show the kind of structure and the coming together of these certain elements, work really well as kind of one image. And it comes across as almost like a composite drawing because they're using a white background. There's obviously a layering between these drawings. And so the drawing is almost broken down into thirds. You've got your, if I just quickly draw some horizontal pieces here, you've got your kind of horizontal elements along here. So you've got 1, 2, 3 tiers to your drawing, which is composed and worked really quite nicely, I think. And it's given lots of breathing room to the drawing. There's lots of white space. The only thing I would say in this drawing is potentially slightly too much text. I always think that with any kind of presentation, you want to minimize your text as much as you can. You almost want the drawings to speak for themselves. But the choice of typography, the silhouette, title, and the choice of font, I think works really well and ties into the graphic communication of the project. Now, this final drawing, once again, is very similar in that it's all black and white, but this has hints of color, which once again I think works really well as just almost like moments to break away from the black and white dark nature of the drawing. And now this one clearly doesn't necessarily have as strong of a grid because there's a clear composite nature to this drawing. They're using the contours to almost provide a kind of bleed to this this zone here. They've obviously cut out the kind of sky, or the skies becoming the background for this page. And there's an interlinking between these drawings which show in the process here through the middle. And so the grid language isn't as clear, but I don't think it necessarily matters because there is still an order. There is still a kind of 3-tier order running across here. 1, 2, 3, where you've got your drawings kind of organized and composed across the page, with the sky acting as almost the backdrop for the drawing. So these are kind of 3 approaches, and I think the 3 clear takeaways from these examples is that consistency across the graphic communication is critical. So having a kind of architectural tone that is consistent across the board, whether that's the typography, whether that's the color palette, whether it's the style of drawing. And if you are doing a variety of drawings, for example, here you can see there's quite a different nature to the drawings in that this is obviously quite a strong render and this is quite a delicate drawing, but they still have a kind of pastel-y feel that makes it feel artistic and gentle. The second thing is going to be composition and hierarchy and building a grid. I think that is really key, just to build a kind of professional presentation that has an order and structure. And the third thing is having image variety, so drawing variety, having renders, having sketches, having floor plan sections, orthographic drawings, maybe some diagrams, explode axonometrics, maybe some site plans and imagery of the site. So having a variety to tell as much of the story of the project as you can. Now, to jump into the competition board that I'm going to create for this particular project, I've already built a kind of grid structure here. Now, I've built this with the idea of having a kind of central main focused image, or maybe composite drawing. That could be the floor plan with the elevations and sections all embedded into one drawing. And I'll show you how I can then start composing that in a moment. With then maybe pockets of concept diagrams and some text, maybe then some the AI generated images that I've created could almost jump into these pockets here with some pockets of text as well. The key thing that I want to communicate is the architectural quality in the detailing of the drawing. Now, to start building the presentation and placing the drawings onto the paper canvases, we use views in Rayon. So views act as almost like a viewport into your model canvas, allowing you to reference live drawings whilst positioning them precisely on your presentation boards. So to show you how views work, I'm just going to make views as the active layer. I'm going to do new view, and then you can choose which view you want to, what viewport you want to take out. So for example, let's do a floor plan, and you'll see that that will drop into place. I'm going to drop that to the top level here. And now, because I've drawn this floor plan at 1:1 in my model canvas, on the right hand side here, once you select your view, you can then manage the scale of that drawing. So you could then choose 1:100, you could then choose maybe 1:200. And then I'm just going to drag and scale this down into that zone that I have drawn for myself. And then you can double click into it, and you can toggle around by holding the mouse scroller. But then you can also disable zoom and pan, so that when you're zooming in and out or panning across your page, the image isn't moving, which is really handy. But for try and get it into place, into a position that you're happy with, you can place it like so. Click done, and you'll see that is dropping into place. Now I'm just going to turn off these squares in the background, and then as you can kind of see, what I'm going to do is create a bit of a composition drawing here for the views. So now I'm going to create a new view into the sections. Now that is coming extremely big, so I'm going to scale that down 1:400. It's slightly too big still. Now the key thing for this will be that I want this view to be on top of this view, because otherwise all of the contours will come over the top of the drawing. And so making sure when you're placing that is the top view in my layer, which creates this composite drawing. And then I'm going to do the other view, and then I can just play around with getting it into the right place. And now all of a sudden it's coming together quite nicely. Now I'm going to do the same for all of the other drawings. So I'm going to make that 1 to 400 again. I'm going to put in all the other sections and elevations that I have. So there's your section and elevation in this bottom right corner. And then I'm going to add those views from the AI generated images. So I've dropped some of these images in at the bottom here. We've got the AXO that I generated in the previous lesson, which gives a bit of an idea of these kind of workspaces and its integration into the landscape with the two kind of levels. You've then got this front elevation that is rendered to give it a bit of a kind of texture and show the materiality. And then I've got these two diagrams that I've created, which are basically just slightly tilted 3-dimensional axonometrics to show this internal space for the gallery and the internal space for the cafe. And the way that I've done that, just to quickly show you, is I generated those as images, and then I've just drawn a fill over the top here to highlight that as red. Because as discussed in one of the other competition board examples that I showed you, a hint of color I think works really well, because a lot of this is black and white. There's lots of gray tones. There's obviously hints of red grids, and then I wanted a hint of red color highlighting these zones here, and then having some hints of red text, etc. So this is the kind of structure and composition that I'm going for this presentation. I'm then going to add some text in this box here, and then some text up the top here with potentially a concept diagram. But as you can see here, you can manage scale quite easily with your views. You can import, you can drop your views in, which creates viewports into your model canvases really well. And then if you make any changes to your model canvas, it will then update in your presentation board here. Now, the final drawing that I'm going to add is going to be a concept diagram. But as you see here, when I load this concept diagram in, and I'm just going to make this quite small in the top corner, which is going to be alongside my concept statement. One thing you'll notice, and that this is a really key thing to discuss, is that the default scale for drawing your line weights and the strokes is 1 to 40. Now, when you import that into a paper canvas, for example, that is at 1 to 1, but your drawings are going to be more like 1 to 500 or 1 to 1000. Obviously, then the stroke is just going to be massive. It's a really kind of strong stroke. And so what you can do is you can actually manage your strokes in the paper canvas without actually changing any of the strokes in the model canvas. So the way to do this is that you can adjust to suit your drawing scale or presentation style by modifying the stroke scale globally, or click into the specific view and manually adjust the line weights, strokes and fills. So if I double click into this view and I select, let's just for argument's sake select a few of these lines, you can then over to the right hand side here, you can then manage your stroke. Let's do maybe 1 or 0.5, and you'll see that you get this kind of purple toggle, which would basically tell you that you have manually changed your stroke in this particular paper canvas. So this is just basically just manually overriding the line weights so you can see them as you wish on your paper canvas. So I can do that with all of these line weights. I can select them all and we can make them all as 0.5. And you can see here that then when you work into it a little bit, the scale of the stroke is much better for this paper canvas, for this view. And then I'm going to position that in the top corner there. I'm going to clean that up in a moment. And then I'm going to also add some text. So you can also add text by selecting your text tool. You can then add some text in. I've already got some text that I've pre-done. I'm just going to drop in now quickly, like so. So the concept statement is that we are proposing a museum of architecture embedded within the steep landscape using typography as a primary generator for form and space. I won't read through this whole thing, but here you can see I've added my concept statement. I've made some slight adjustments here to this image by turning off some of the blue so it's all focused on the red. And then down here at the bottom, I've added a bit of a text about the design geometry and some of these spaces like the cafe and the gallery AXO. And I've also added some titles at 0.4 centimeters bold to each drawing. So you've got the north elevation, section BB, front elevation render, and then I've also added some titles here, which are just small, subtle. You don't want your text too big and to dominate your drawing, as I've mentioned before. I think having just some subtle text in there really helps with building the structure and the grid and the language, but also just supporting some of the descriptions for your projects, but not overdoing it. As I mentioned, you don't want to overdo with text. There's a fine balance. But so here, this is our final presentation. You can then preview it. If you wanted to preview how it would look when you export it, you could head up to the top right hand corner here, click this preview button, and it will load up the presentation before you export it, so you've got an idea of how it will look when you click export. And you can see here that the line weights actually work really well. You can obviously turn the grids off, which is what I'm going to do quickly. And you can see now how we've got a really well structured presentation, the floor plan, sections and elevations being the core focus, the kind of hero image to the presentation, then with some kind of supplementary diagrams, sections and elevations, and then some renders to help kind of support and communicate the language and the design approach to the project. And so you can see here that by layering this over, it gives it quite a dynamic and complex feel to the drawing. It adds that extra level of detail and layer to the presentation. And then at the top here, we've got our kind of concept statement tucked away in the corner. And so this is the kind of final competition boards for this competition. Of course, you can then do different styles. You could do this as the inverted. You could put a black background on here and invert all of these drawings and make it quite a bold presentation. You could do it as the kind of blue pastel render, blue pastel style, or you could do the rendered effect. But for this particular project, going all the way back to the start of the course, the key was to always show architectural quality. And so as a drawing set, I really wanted to communicate that architectural drawing and architectural detail in the presentations. And I think a black and white drawing with the shadow, with the hints of red, as a composite drawing, I think really communicates that well. So now to export these drawings and to share them with colleagues or teammates, as this is an all-in-one platform, Rayon allows you to export your work directly from where you create it. So you can use custom or standard board sizes without needing additional software like InDesign or Google Slides. We've seen that from start to finish, we've built some really compelling drawings and a presentation without leaving the software in any capacity. And you can always be in sync with your team. So Rayon's view system ensures everything stays up to date. Any changes made to drawings, styles, or visuals are instantly reflected across all boards. So this enables true parallel workflows where drawing, styling, and layouts can happen simultaneously, fully synced in one place. And then instead of sending PDFs, attachments, or USBs, you can actually share your competition entry with a symbol link. So if you head up to the top right-hand corner here and you click share, you can share your model and invite people to either edit the model or just to view the model. You can obviously change that to editor, admin, view. And then you can invite people, or you can make a copy by basically just clicking the copy link here, and that will copy a link to your model. And as I mentioned earlier on, you can also publish the styles for the model. You can publish the blocks, and you can then also publish as a template and a presentation. So if you click publish as a presentation, and then you copied that or opened it, you'll be able to see that you can then view this particular project as a presentation alone without seeing any of the model canvases and features that you've kind of worked on behind the scenes. If you don't want someone to see those elements in your presentation, you can share it in this way. So then this will appear as a single presentation image. You can then make that full screen if you wanted to. And that's a really great way of sharing your drawings across people with a single link. And this workflow just ensures your competition submissions is not only well designed, but also clearly communicated, easy to manage, and ready to share. And just to show you how you could export your drawings as an image or a PDF, if you head over to the left-hand side here, you click Export PDF, you can then choose your paper canvas. So we're going to choose our page paper canvas. You'll see here then you can manage your image quality. So I'm going to keep that pretty high. You can then export it as a PNG or PDF. You can then choose the stroke scale. I would always recommend the screen. However, you've seen the stroke on the screen. Click export like so. You can see how this has been exported now as a PDF that you could then send to a printer if you wanted to print it out properly to pin it up. So that is the end of the course. I really hope you've enjoyed the process of me taking a brief from the very early stages all the way through to these final competition boards. I've really enjoyed the process of producing these drawings for you guys to follow, and I think it's come out as a really quite nicely communicated and designed project. If I say so myself, I think it's come across really well, and I'm really kind of happy with how we've designed something from the brief, from the get-go. So really hope you enjoyed the course. If you have, please make sure that you give the course a like or save it or follow along at any point. You can follow this course, of course, at your own speed, which is really a great feature of having this course available for you guys to watch at any point. And I really hope you've enjoyed the process of me taking you through how you can do everything all in Rayon, and how Rayon is a really great one-stop solution for you to produce architectural drawings, to build concept diagrams, to build competition boards all in one place. And that is the really important message of this course. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one.